Welcome to Daredevil in the Details, a show that explores and dotes on the philosophy and themes of Netflix's Daredevil, a digression collection brought to you by Method to the Madness and Zero Indent. Today is an emergency bonus break glass in case of emergency recording session because we have our first look at Daredevil, Born Again. We're going to do a classic YouTube situation. We're going to do a bit of a reaction. We're going to talk about it. We've got Patrick, of course, from Method to the Madness. Pat, what's good? How you doing?
Oh, I'm good, man. I'm excited to watch this trailer for the first time.
Yeah, Pat definitely hasn't seen it. Definitely not. So that's.
Yeah.
I think my explicit instruction to you last week was, hey, there's a trailer coming out, don't watch it. And you know what happened? The same thing that happens with everything I say. No one paid attention.
Wow. You said it like months ago, actually. But you did say it. That's my fault. I will concede. But to be fair, it was months ago. And like, if you'll notice the title of this trailer, does it say anything about Daredevil specifically?
Yeah, dude. It's the first thing it says. It's the first thing in brackets, dude.
Oh, it is too. All right, never mind. Okay, I thought it might have been like a generic like teaser trailer. That was where my head was at.
I didn't think it was gonna.
I mean, it kind of is.
To be, but they snuck in the first look at Born Again, basically.
Yeah. Okay. It's a first look. All right. That's I was waiting for the actual trailer. That's what I thought you.
Okay, Darth. Tell me about your Daredevil in the Details journey, because I'm given to understand that you are the show's second biggest fan. The biggest fan, of course, being Fuzzy.
Yeah, I legitimately really enjoy y'all's conversation about this, and it is the weirdest thing because I've Pavloved myself into thinking that I could only work out if I'm listening to you guys talk about Daredevil, because historically that's what I've done my workout session after work every day. And if I start trying to exercise and it's to music or something, my body is like, this isn't right. I need to hear Pat and David right now. So it is really weird what I have done to myself, all because of your show. And I'm only like a third of the way through because you've recorded so much.
Yeah.
So I've got a whole lot left to go to catch up.
We're getting to the pointy end of things, and we've got our first look at Daredevil Born Again. It is contained within a larger sort of Disney Plus sizzle, but it's the first footage we're going to see, and I thought it was a good jumping off point to get us kind of in the mode of thinking about Born Again, because that's coming in March, and we're going to do our coverage. We've also got some sneaky coverage coming up of the Batman to tide us over. Just working in the same spaces in the same universe. But it's getting to the point now where I'm starting to think about, like, I've even had to break down the show for this, I've had to break down Daredevil Born Again for this show. That's how close we are, is I know what the episode layout is. So we're kind of getting to the business end of things with Born Again. When me and Pat started, Born Again was but a cancelled twinkle in the Disney Plus eye. And now there's a show. So I'm very, very excited to talk about it. I'm going to quickly click through to the second video here. I'm not going to press play yet. I'm going to go full screen. So we're going to watch it. Now, Patrick definitely hasn't seen it. This is definitely his first time watching. We're going to watch it together. We're then going to... We'll do a bit of scrutiny, and then we'll have a bit of a conversation. So are you boys ready? Going to press play.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
I brought you here to offer you an opportunity.
Oh, I smell what you're stepping in. It's going to get good.
There he is.
It's been some time, hasn't it? You've come up in the world.
I can say the same about you.
I wonder if your darker half would agree. Exactly what kind of a lawyer are you?
A really good one.
Yes! It looks so cool.
I want to build something.
For an adventure?
Ooh, I'm excited for this.
The
Yeah,
battle
dude.
they will sing about for ages.
You can slate whenever you're ready.
Simon Williams, reading for Wonder Man.
Yeah, dude. Nice.
A lot of bangers.
Yeah, let me quickly let me just quickly a bit that matters. So, okay, I'm already noticing a few interesting things. I think immediately, like, it visually looks like a Daredevil show, which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how much money they poured into this, but the vibe I'm getting is like they went how much they were like, okay, let's go to Vermont and let's shoot this on a shoestring budget, and then we'll just like try and do whatever we can to make this not expensive. Because I feel like so much of Marvel Television's problem at the moment is they keep throwing money at stuff, not knowing if it'll work. I wonder if they're like, this is a sure bet, so we're just not gonna drop cash on it, or if it's gonna be like a proper, you know, visual Marvel extravagant. I can't imagine it would be. Like, I don't. It's not gonna be like weird portals and shit. I don't. You know what I mean? Like, it feels of the same genre as Daredevil, even just visually.
Yeah, I mean that has been the question. Like, what sort of like continuity in the sense of, you know, tone and production are they gonna carry on from Netflix? In terms of the pattern that like Disney Plus has been going at, it's like keep all the shows separate, do, you know, established each IP first, don't do any sort of crossovers nonsense. So I imagine that's what they're going to do. They're going to like stick to the universe of Daredevil specifically, as we can see, has all the all-star cast from Daredevil. But yeah, and I don't know about budget, but it does seem like they're trying to have some consistency with the feel, which is great.
Yeah, I think that was our biggest I mean, for those who sort of, I mean, we talked about it a little bit in the show. We tried to avoid spending a huge amount of time on it because it felt like it was one of those. The point of the show is to think about, you know, the point of Daredevil in detail is to think about what Daredevil is doing as a storytelling vehicle, not necessarily trying to outlay the paratext of like the Marvel Disney thing that, you know, has swallowed it whole. But I think it's interesting that we've gone all the way back around from where Born Again started, which was, hey, we're just going to like, you know, we're going to take these characters that we have and we're going to just keep Charlie Cox, and then we're going to get a whole new cast of everybody else. And we've warped all the way back around to like, oh, no, guys, we promise it's the same universe, same characters. You know, I mean, what's it been? Like, it's got to be... it's almost a decade since the season 3 came out, right? Like, season 3 was what, 2017 is when they filmed that? 2016? I can't remember.
Filmed it? 2019? Oh no, maybe it was 2018 when it came out.
I think we've had this exact conversation on the show before. Let me check while Darth tell us, what's the vibe? How'd it hit you?
So the really weird thing that I can't get over when it comes to this show is actually nothing to do with the show. It's with Spider-Man No Way Home. And I really want to know what Disney is doing with their overarching strategy with getting Daredevil into the like main Avengers storyline, because introducing him in the movie and like the audience went crazy. Like everyone was like immediately recognized him and was like cheering and all this stuff. And I'm like, finally they're bringing him, because like there's several characters in the Netflix shows that would have been amazing to bring over, but they're never doing it. Like they've refused to. I mean, yeah, probably a lot of different franchises refuse to bring over TV show actors into film. For maybe there's a good reason for it, but I was really hoping that at this point we would have him starring alongside the other heroes on the big screen, and we haven't had it. And now that they're going back to this, you know, episodic formula, just like TV, I'm like actually mildly disappointed, if that makes sense, because I thought this was going to be like, I thought No Way Home was going to be a new step for Daredevil as a whole in, you know, our modern culture, if that rambling makes any sense.
Yeah, I think there's probably a few things to think about from like a mechanistic perspective there, right? It's first of all money, right? If you have a star that you've homegrown for TV, bring them into movies, the conversations about money get really complicated, and the contracts also look very, very different. I think the other thing is, and I don't mean this to sound disparaging to the actors they've chosen for the films, but TV acting is a much more challenging and involving exercise than movie acting a lot of the time. Especially if you think about the ways in which Charlie Cox, Deborah Ann Wall, and the guy who's from the Mighty Ducks, Foggy, who's the actor we never remember, they functionally have to carry 3 seasons of television without any particular special effects or Marvel events to drive their reactions and things like that, right? It's purely operating in, this is a television drama thriller. Like, do you have the juice to sustain that as an actor? And the answer that those 3 actors returned with was a resounding yes. And of course, Vincent D'Onofrio putting in a career best performance as Fisk every time he is on screen, every time he's thought about in the show. He develops such a gravity and a presence in that role that I worry that when you put these actors against a Tom Holland, for example, who has granted grown quite a bit in the last sort of 5 to 6 years as an actor, and when you see him in some of his the more indie stuff, he's definitely developing some of that that more kind of prestige acting, that more subtle acting. I think a lot of the Marvel film acting is like big acting, and then I think for something like Daredevil, it's small acting and it's slow acting. And I just think there's probably a bit of a friction there between, well, what kind of film do you put him in? Like, because I want to see him with Spider-Man too. Like, that's one of my favorite things in the comics is when they just buddy cop about, and Daredevil finds Spider-Man the most infuriating guy on the planet, but secretly they're buds. You know what I mean? It's like, I hate you, but like you're my guy kind of thing. So I don't know how you marry those 2 tones outside of like centering the films on these characters, and I don't think they have enough cultural cachet outside of us nerds for that to make sense for Marvel. I don't know. I agree with you, but I also think like it's a mighty big ask for them to make that work in the current state that company's in, I feel.
I think especially one element of that soup is that rolling Daredevil back is like to this exact format you're talking about, Darth, is itself like some sort of like subversive marketing, because I feel like that is what everyone expects when you introduce Daredevil into Spider-Man. Oh, he's going to be a big player in the next Avengers phase. But on the other hand, I imagine creators and execs know that the prestige of Daredevil in the minds of the fans lays in its like sort of underground, low-key setting of the grungy Netflix TV show. And so thereby like keeping it in that format, but still slowly integrating him into the Avengers scene is like, I feel like from their perspective, it's probably the best of both worlds, right? You set him up for future Marvel films alongside Tom Holland possibly, but then you introduce him back into the MCU with like something familiar and safe, something that the fans would want maybe.
I could also really see them having the issue, or perceiving that they have the issue of they don't know how to bring him in an actionable way, because he's not supposed to be a superhero in the same fashion that the rest of them are. And it's like the joke of like Black Widow and what she can kick. How is she fighting alongside Hulk and all these other people and she can kick. Right. I think it's a Family Guy joke that I'm riffing off of.
Well, Joss Whedon gets so up his own ass in that second Avengers film that he has Hawkeye do that bit. Where Wanda's like kind of having a bit of a confidence issue in the final battle, and he has that little aside with her where she's like, I don't know if I can do it, and he's like, listen, man, I'm just a guy with a bow and arrow, dude. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, what am I doing here? And all this crazy business. And it's like, shut up. Like, we know, you don't have to tell us. Yes, I agree. Like, what situation do you put him in where he isn't immediately pancaked by like I don't... Can he go toe-to-toe with, like, an alien? Like, would a Chitauri kill Daredevil? I don't know. That'd be a sick fight, though. Like, if he was struggling, like, really struggling against one Chitauri, and you made it, like, a scrappy fight, that'd be awesome. I think there's a lot of avenues for this that I think would work really, really well, is, like, you could imagine, like, this is a really stupid pitch, but I think it would be fun, is, like, a single Chitauri escapes containment. They do this in Torchwood a lot, where it's like one alien is a real problem for the Torchwood crew. You could sort of have a similar manhunt where it's like Daredevil is going after this one alien, chasing them across like, you know, the fucking, you know, the Washington forests or something like that. You put it in a completely different setting. You have him use his gadgets in completely different ways, and it's sort of it's more of that picaresque style story where it's him chasing this thing's impact from town to town, solving problems as he goes, and then eventually catching it and trying to stop it. But sort of in the way that I think Mando season 1 in particular. See, I made it about Star Wars, Darth. You're welcome. I think Mando season 1 in particular does a really good job of trying to gather this cast in like an organic way. And obviously, if as a genre head, you can see the cues, you know, pretty easily laid out. But I don't think it's as obvious as some people might make it out to be, which is like every episode he makes an ally, and then at the end all the allies come together. But that's kind of, I think you could do something like that with a Daredevil, gathering some of those more extant Marvel characters to help try and take on this threat that he can't do himself. And then, of course, you know, at the end, you basically have him box it out with the alien, which would be sick as fuck, if we're being honest. So I think you'd have to play in that space, but I don't know, like, can either of you see a version of reality where, like, he ends up transitioning, you know, these characters end up transitioning to the broader context of Marvel and like the film setting, or does it kind of feel like he's going to be relegated to the grunge forever, and is that what we want? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure where I land these days.
Yeah, I think that's what demonstrated in She-Hulk, that he you know, maybe like from the perspective of like how's he gonna fight aliens good, I don't know about that, but in terms of like Marvel tone, in terms of like how he plays off that Joss Whedon style like snappy dialogue stuff, it works completely, I thought.
Yeah, I agree, because he's serious enough, but in like a wry kind of dry way, where I think that scene in particular that we talked about on the bonus episode, Pat, about, you know, before he goes and does his corridor fight, and they're having that conversation about goons. And he's like, well, I don't know, like, have you ever done this before? And she's like, no. And he's like, well, then you wouldn't know the difference between like a henchman and a goon. And these are goons. And trust me, I'll take care of the goons. You can't, you think they're henchmen, but they're not that goons. Like, trust me, dude. And then like, and then he just starts flirting with her. It's great. Like, it's such a compelling scene because Charlie Cox just has the most charm of any man on the planet. And he's so good. It helps that he's so good looking as well.
Mm-hmm. You guys spent a lot of time talking about that on the podcast. I have picked that up. One of the recurring themes is he is so charming and good looking.
I'm sorry.
We all want to be him.
Yeah. How can you not be down bad for Charlie Cox, like, and as Daredevil? I mean, every character is pitch perfect casting. Speaking of which, John Bernthal, he's back. He's looking fit in this little screenshot. He's got that nice little fade that we like to see. So I think there's probably it's interesting just looking. I've just been sort of scrubbing through in the background here, just looking through like the settings and things like that. It feels like they've done that classic thing they always do with Daredevil, where they're like, how do we make Vermont look like New York? And something with the Charlie Cox apparatus that's always interesting to me, you know, with him driving a show, is always this question of like, what version of this character are we getting, right? Daredevil season 1, we get the kind of still trying to figure out what he's doing, Matt. Season 2, we get the full high fantasy superhero season, and then season 3 season 2 is that plus like your sex Toxie X is back, and then season 3 is like the espionage ground level. What did you call it, Pat? Like the most edgelord season, the most edgelord Matt we ever get. Like,
right? Yeah.
He has all those little monologues about like
something like that.
I've killed Matt Murdock. Now there's only Daredevil. So I'm curious, like tonally, what you end up getting from a Charlie Cox, and even, you know, what's his relationship like with a character like Fisk now, right? You know, we're sort of functionally, I did look it up. So season 3 was 2018. So functionally quite a long way out from where we were just timeline-wise in the show. What do those relationships look like? Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I'm not sure what I would want the show to do with all of this, except to not have it be static. Sometimes with this stuff where they come back and they're like, it's been 8 years, but nothing's changed. Like sometimes a lot of legacy sequels will do that. Like the Fraser, I said that weird. The Fraser legacy sequel, that very much was like, it's been, 15 years or whatever, but basically Fraser's the same guy. And it's like, well, what was the point then? Like you just did another season of Fraser, and we already have Fraser.
What I think would be an interesting dynamic, just crossed my mind, that if Fisk was like kind of a little bit scared of Matt now, like, because here's another thing I'm wondering, if their deal is still holding from the end of the third season, that Matt will, get Vanessa arrested or like sent to prison if Fisk doesn't like play nice. So I think that would be an interesting dynamic. That'd be something fresh if like when Matt and Fisk met, instead of this like tense, menacing relationship, or rather than like, Fisk being the one in charge, like Matt could be the one holding the power in their relationship now. I think that would maybe be an interesting course to take. And then I don't know, I guess like Fisk's journey would be similar to season 3 again, where he's like working to undermine Matt and secretly like, making clandestine back alley deals to regain power or something.
Right. Or the opposite, which is like maybe Fisk is on the up and up now and they're just actually buds. Like maybe that threat looming for so long has forced Fisk to rehabilitate himself. And maybe at some point in those intervening years, he's gone, hey, I'm not going to tell anyone. Like, you've clearly got you've cleaned yourself up. You've righted your wrongs. Like, maybe that's the direction you take it, is you have Fisk be sort of rehabilitated into society and show that, like, Daredevil's mercy works. Like, that this was the right choice not to ace Fisk at the end of that third season.
That seems like it could be the case. Like, there's that scene where they're like at a coffee shop or some shit, and they're just like chatting. Like, what kind of relationship do these two have that would, mean that they just like have a nice chat like this? I mean, obviously it's not friendly chat. We can tell, but like, yeah, I think that's maybe not too far from what would actually be the case.
Get a fortnightly cup of coffee with Wilson Fisk.
Yeah, he's like his warden or something. Like he has to check in with Matt every couple weeks.
Oh
to
yeah,
make sure he's not getting up to no good.
Yeah, what do you call that? Like your Darth, what is it in America
officer.
when your parole officer? Yeah, that's
Parole
right.
officer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now,
I don't know that for a reason.
Suspicious.
That's just general knowledge.
Suspicious. Are you from Florida? Something interesting. I've just caught this on the freeze frame. I think Matt is fighting Bullseye in this little shot here. It's very small on your screen.
Yeah. I was wondering about that.
But yeah, this blue suit is definitely the comic book Bullseye suit, and we obviously know he's coming back. That's not news. But there's a lot going on. I think a concern I have, I suppose, maybe is I should say it like this. Is a concern I have is like, also I've changed. I'm on a different application now, so if y'all want to watch it, do so in a different. Let me just close that tab so I don't get that audio. Something that worries me about Marvel in general is when they go, we're making a thing, and it's got 27,000 ideas and characters in it. When they're like, we're doing. There was a recent example of this that I'm not going to be able to think of. Oh, it was Deadpool and Wolverine, where they were like, it's Marvel, but also it's Fox, and it's this, and it's that. And it, in some ways it was a nice send-off. And I said to Darth, like, I was pleasantly surprised by that film not feeling like it. Like, for a film that pitched itself as, like, it's this wacky cast of characters, and there's cameos and stuff. There's a bunch of cameos at the start, and then it's just a film, like, for the most part. and that kind of works, I think, in the context of that type of story. But yeah, bringing back the Punisher, Bullseye, Fisk, like, that's already a lot that the show hasn't done before, right? Those were kind of self-contained to their own seasons. I guess Fisk obviously escapes containment throughout the whole show because he's in every season as like a force of nature, but as like physical threats or as kind of internal psychology of these characters, right? How do you spend enough time with each of them to make it feel like it's the thing that Daredevil does really well, which is he's the internal world of these people,
Maybe in a decade from now, the Netflix Daredevil show will feel like the Batman Begins to this new era of the Dark Knight. It's establishing all the characters, and now that everything's in place, you have to really, delve deep into like the themes and stuff.
Sink your teeth
into the thematic relationships between each of the characters.
The thematic ooze, as we say on the show.
Yeah.
It also kind of got me thinking of how this entire series is so set up to exist on its own, outside of or underneath, alongside, I don't know, but like the rest of this huge, enormous universe-shattering stuff that's going on in the Avengers films and the other Avengers TV shows and stuff, and like none of that ever seems to affect this little world. There was a little bit in the Archer one where he had the girl that became his protege. I'm blanking on the name of it. It was like a Christmas special.
The Hawkeye show.
Oh, I did not get that from the Arrow guy with the girl. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because the blip happens in that show, right? That's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, but, Fisk is in that, isn't he?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So like, they're bringing in like crossovers with these characters exist together, but the huge circumstances of one story don't affect this story. It's just like, okay, we have to keep Batman in Gotham, and he could only fight little goons, and maybe it's a budget thing, maybe it's whatever, but it just seems so weird that like in the Loki shows they like rewrote all of history and time and blah blah blah, and over here he's stopping purse snatchers. And I'm not really talking about a scale thing, I'm just talking about how like the stuff over here doesn't ever seem to affect the stuff over here, and it just seems so odd for it's the same company doing it all. But the different shows they don't seem to have any impact, I guess.
It's
if
funny.
That makes any sense.
It does. It's funny you say that.
It's always been the case, though.
Yeah, it's always been the case. And Pat's Perspective Season 4 addresses that problem pretty head on. So when you get, look out for that bit of sizzle for that coming out. That comes out, I believe, on Christmas Day. So that's a little present for everybody this year.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome. Jesus came back, so too did Daredevil, Season 4.
Marvel's always played it kind of like fast and loose with that kind of stuff post Avengers. Like the whole thing with the Eternals, like there was like a giant alien coming out of the earth, like that never got mentioned again. That's just how it is, like he can't, it's too much work to address that kind of stuff in Daredevil, I feel.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily saying just throw out references so we know hey, it's still there. Like I think they did that in She-Hulk. There was like one shot of people like going rock climbing on the big guy out in the ocean.
Oh really?
Yeah, it was referenced in some other shows, and everyone was like, oh look, see, they're kind of interconnecting these things, even though they weren't.
That's interesting. I like that kind of Trying to think of a way to say this doesn't make me sound like an asshole. I like when a world event happens and the story takes the objects in time and space seriously. So like that first Tom Holland Spider-Man film where the setup is like, hey, we need to send someone in to clean up all this alien stuff, right? Like that's a really interesting sort of pivot point for me of story of like, this is like, how does this impact ground level people, right? How does this impact everyday working stiffs? I guess what I'd like to see more from this universe is, instead of going, let's put Daredevil in a Spider-Man film or whatever, which would be fun and I would enjoy that. I think I'd much rather see, like, what does living in this universe do to New York, or change about the state of, like, the physical nature of the world, and then, you know, as a materialist, what does then that physical, you know, industrial space do that changes people's ideology, right? Something that me and Pat talked about a lot in that finale. Not to, like, I'm not going to spoil anything, but we talked a lot about, like, well, like, from an infrastructure perspective, what does half of the people do to a city like if half of the people are gone, what does that do to a city like New York, where it's so dense that you're going to have entire districts that are just empty? You know, and what does that mean from a maintenance and an upkeep perspective? And I think the corollary is true as well. Like, what do you do with all these, like, giant aliens that got killed, or, you know, these ancient gods that were slayed? You know, do they become like Easter Island type statues that just become, people don't even think about them as being unusual? You know, that's the type of thing I think I'd be interested in a Daredevil context. Is what are those physical remnants or physical mechanisms that are results of those larger stories, that and how do they impact a show like this, and the stories being told in this universe, and the material reality these characters are forced to contend with, rather than putting these characters in the sort of heightened, you know, big budget action films, although that could also be interesting.
It's been some time, hasn't it? You've come up in the world.
I could say the same about you.
I wonder if your darker half would agree.
Exactly what kind of a lawyer are you? A really good one.
Or they could go the other way and bring some of those big characters down to this level. Because I kept thinking that Loki would pair really well with him, I think.
With Daredevil?
Because all of his stuff, as far as I know, is image-based magic, which Daredevil would not be confused by. And theoretically, this could be like the first time in his life that Loki is, like, seriously overwhelmed and he doesn't believe in himself anymore, whatever you want to take with it. But he's like, he's met someone that utterly defeats his abilities. And then they also could have an interesting dynamic together, depending on which season of Matt that you're talking about. I guess I was thinking more of like the quirky one that you referenced from She-Hulk. But yeah, if they did something like that and brought in like one of the other villains down to this level and had them doing some like low-level villain stuff just to try to set up the bigger stuff later on, then they wouldn't have to figure out how to make Daredevil work there. You're kind of going at it a different way, but still sort of achieving the same thing.
One of my ideas that I threw out for the prospective season 4 was a fight between him and Black Widow, because I always pictured like they would have amazing chemistry, and then you could have just Black Widow just annihilate Daredevil, I think, and then, you know, he would get humbled, and that would be like, I don't know, I just think that would that would be a really funny and cool interaction.
That could be fun. Yeah. And I think Darth has hit on something that I want to connect those two thoughts, because I think there's a really compelling idea buried in the kind of intersection of those two things, which is give us the big screen presence actors and the villains or the heroes in that, but like give me them burned out and like washed up, forced back into the street level, you know, to contend with this stuff, right? Give me a Black Widow who's like she doesn't have the juice like she used to. She can't go and do these espionage missions anymore because she's too famous. Like, give me her trying to deal with the fact that like this career she had in the Avengers is over and she's just a person again. And like, but she's still got the juice to take on a Daredevil, and yeah, like you said, Pat, just completely like, you know, take him to task and beat the shit out of him. And what is being burnt out like that do to these characters? And I think Daredevil season 3 does a really good job of giving us Matt Murdock in that space. I want to see what that means for other characters in this universe who, and you know, part of it I imagine is like some of these actors, it's so expensive to put them on screen that you could never reasonably do this, but in a world where capitalism is not the point of this stuff and they make art the priority, I think you could have a lot of really interesting play with some of those characters you don't really think about as being, you know, interesting or having like interesting internal psychology, right? We've got spoilers for Guardians 3. I don't know. Peter Quill's back on Earth now. Like, he's just kicking around, like, yeah, semi-retired. What's he up to? You know, like, there's a lot of room here, I think.
So you did watch it then?
Yeah, I watched it. Did I not tell you? I watched it a couple weeks ago.
No, because last I heard you hadn't watched it, and I was like, what the hell? Like, what do you mean you haven't watched it? It's Guardians 3.
I missed it in the theaters. I think I had COVID when it came out. But I have to censor that, otherwise this will get demonetized. But yeah, I think you could look at this big array of characters and go, okay, who out there is still around that might be over the hill? Especially because some of these actors don't want to be in these big budget films anymore and be in these big costumes and green screens and shit. Like, which, you know, oh my god, which is the Chris that's Captain America? Chris Evans. Chris Evans is great in all the like TV stuff he's doing for Apple because he's just doing dramatic acting now. Like, he's just getting to act and he's fucking brilliant. And he's like, he is incredible in Defending Jacob. Like, that's probably the best, you know, performance I've seen from him. You know, up until some of the more recent stuff. But I think there are actors that you could go and find and be like, okay, what interesting story could we have on a street level here that doesn't have to contend with this big complicated multiverse, and then the paratext of like, well, this person did these things, so we can't have them be the star anymore, so we have to rewire our entire mechanism. And then like, oh, and then Robbie Downey Jr. is back, and like, now I have to worry about you know, you can sort of just completely eschew all of that problem and be like, who can we put into this space that might have something interesting to do in that space, you know, as an actor and as a character.
I kind of feel like a way to go about that, maybe in like, not now, but in a few years when there's a market for 2010 nostalgia, is you make new entries set in a period in the past of the MCU.
Interesting.
Like they did with the Black Widow movie. You know how like that was set, like it was meant to be set like a few years before whatever Civil War or maybe after Civil War or something like that. But it was asynchronous from like the, you know, how they place the movies in the timeline, like as they come out, you know.
That's interesting.
So yeah, so that was the foundation for my Black Widow idea as well. Was that like, because it was taking place during the blip, like she would still be around, kind of thing. So, you know, I'm very obsessed with S.H.I.E.L.D., if you can't tell, but like, yeah, I think if you made a show like that set in the past, have, I don't know, Nick Fury trying to recruit Daredevil into S.H.I.E.L.D. or something like that would be amazing. Yeah.
Damn. Yeah, I could see that. Give me the, like, I tell you what though, give me the 90s Captain Marvel adventures as well. Like, because there's so many time periods here where you could just do like some really fun TV shows that don't have to worry about everything else. Because like, she's been around for a minute, you know, like, and you can do the fun, like, you know, 90s fashion, and you know, you could do all those things that people like to see. I guess technically Spider-Man is sort of, it's doing that early 2000s throwback, but you could almost do like some period pieces as well, which could be kind of fun. Because I really liked, I'm having that thing where I can't remember names of anything anymore. The one with Captain America's girlfriend and it's set in the past.
Oh, Agent Carter.
Agent Carter. That was a really fun idea. I'm not sure that the show ended up getting to go on long enough for it to figure out what its identity was, but that was a really fun idea of a show. And I feel like they were more experimental with stuff back then in a way that maybe they can't be now that it's all under one production house.
Yeah. Marvel period pieces, man. Give us more.
Give us more, man. Give me some weird shit in the past. That's what I'm all about. Or some weird stuff where everyone's sad and tired because they've been superheroes too long.
I guess now that they've brought the X-Men movies into the fold, like that sort of ticks that box, maybe.
True. Yeah, I suppose I could just go rewatch Logan. I don't know why I'm asking for them to just make more Logan. But then in the comics, they keep doing it. They keep being like, it's a new old man thing, and it's another character in that same, like, emptied out universe where everyone's sad and old. I think they're actually doing an old man, like, Daredevil. Well, they have done that in that series, I think. I might be confusing that with another character. But it's in the same space from memory. So, you know, Marvel's thinking of...
The Dark Daredevil returns?
Yeah, bro. We just old.
Yeah.
Well, it's that universe is like basically. I mean, you guys know the thing with like the Old Man Logan universe, which is basically like so. Wolverine gets tricked into killing all the X-Men, so then he's big and he's sad, and everyone's sad and old, and the universe is like collapsing. He's doing a big road trip. He's doing a road trip with a blind Hawkeye driving Spider-Man's truck across America, and it's big and it's sad. And then they're like, that was sad and everyone loved it. Let's do more characters in this universe. But it's getting to the point now where it's like, okay, but how many people are... You keep adding more people being alive, and I thought the point of this is that everyone was dead. It's sort of like slowly undoing itself as a concept, which I think is just inevitable with comic books, where eventually you have to be like, and it's a new universe again. Forget all the old continuity. None of those guys are here. It's just the core cast of characters again. And then over time, you build up to like yet another reset, and that is just comic books as an art form to a certain extent.
To be fair, that's also always existed in comics. Like recently I was going back through like the 90s comics that we have collected, and it's like the universe ends in this one, the universe ends in this one, the universe ends in this one, and like all cities are being destroyed all the time, and they're rebuilt by the next couple issues, you know. So I mean, part of that is how do you reset and start some kind of new story without all the devastation and everything. Weird side note from you talking about the actors a minute ago was it got me thinking about Robert Downey Jr. coming back and being announced as whatever metalhead dude that he's playing.
Doom guy.
Doom, yeah.
Fred Doom.
Nobody remembering names tonight. But it got me thinking about that because like the audience went crazy, the internet went crazy. They're like, he's back. It's this great person, blah blah blah. And you were talking about the acting chops of all these people in TV, but no one cares about the acting. They only care about these hyper iconic actors. And are we ever going to see that change? So that because there's no opportunity for greater stories that could bring in more people and everything. It's just these these few people that all the different filmmakers want to have because they know that they're going to sell the tickets.
Yeah, I think that comes back to like their priority is making money, right? And that is just, unfortunately, that's just Disney, right? As a company, if you look at Netflix and the way that they were operating when they made Daredevil. The priority in making Daredevil wasn't, we need to sell more Netflix subscriptions. It was like, we're going to make something really, really different and good. And we're going to make other different, really good things in the same space. Like, Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, the one we don't talk about. We're going to make these things and they're going to be really, really, really unique. And they're going to be tonally specific. And they're going to feel like a show operating in that early 2000s prestige TV space, but for superheroes. And they achieved that, right? With some exceptions. We all know what those are. I'm not going to say it here. But I think the difficulty becomes, okay, we did that once, and then Disney collapsed all of the properties together and said, okay, we're going to own everything now. But now their priority isn't, we're going to make something that's really, really tonally specific and really, really unique, and is going to be in that mode of that early prestige TV. Now they're like, we need to make a thing that has things you recognize from other thing to get you to watch thing, so that when we do next thing, you recognize thing from that thing, and so you want to watch next thing, right? And it sort of becomes this daisy chain logic instead of trying to focus in and hone in on, creating that one great thing that you can then jump off from, right? And there are some exceptions. Like I think about something like Moon Knight, which wasn't particularly critically well received, but was really trying to do its own thing and really felt like it's just this complete other. It felt more in the Netflix mode than anything that I think we've seen from the Marvel TV kind of apparatus. Perhaps with the exception of something like a WandaVision, where that was just like fucking why. It's insane that anyone made that TV show. Go read Pat's article on that. I think it does a really good job of explaining like the thing that it's doing and maybe where it untethers a little bit and where it unravels. I just wonder how much juice they have left to do things like that and how long before they realize that's what they need to be doing again. You know, at what point do they kind of reset to the mode they were in when Daredevil was coming out? You know, think about that time period. That's when they're recruiting Edgar Wright to do Ant-Man, right? They're going out, they're finding these directors, they're going to make unique films, and then they get really gun-shy when they realize they have to make all this money every time. You know, it's like, well, now there's a pressure when you release an Avengers film to make $1 billion or whatever, right? You release a TV show, and everyone goes, oh, it's more Marvel, and no one freaking watches it because they're not doing anything with it. And so how long till they come back around and begin to get back into that mode again is probably a real question. Or do they just never come back to that and they stop doing it and they do something else instead, you know?
I think the Disney Plus shows have been a bit of a sandbox for new experimentation, I think, to a degree. As you say, I think part of it is safe returns on investment, you know, similar Marvel tone, similar episode lengths, you know, great casting, whatnot. And that's why I think they are keeping them separate from each other right now. It's because they're just like, you know, they keep rolling these out, seeing which ones hit, and then from there, I think they're thinking, you know, they're waiting until they can be confident that, like, you know, this series is worth continuing. This one was a bit of a flop. So, you know, like the new show, like Agatha, like that's been a real hit, and it's pretty unique. I don't know if you guys have seen it or have been watching it, but you know, I think that's the sort of space that's equivalent to what Daredevil was in 2015. Mm-hmm. Shows like Agatha is like the experimental sandbox where they're like, you know, allowing more creativity to take hold.
Yeah, exactly. So like, and it's one of those things where it's still there. It's just, where are they applying it and where aren't they necessarily applying that? And it, even just at a glance, like, it feels like we're on the right track with Born Again. You know, like it feels like, and we could be wrong, and we could sit down and watch this in March and just be devastated. I think we'll have a great time anyway, just seeing these characters back together and seeing these actors back together. Just knowing how much fun they seem to have making the show as well, I think is just really heartwarming. We've obviously made an effort not to consume too much content around the show itself because we want to go into the exercise fresh. But, you know, even when you glance at, you know, interviews of these actors talking, you know, on the press junkets and things like that, talking about this show, it's not like other press junkets where, I don't mean this in a disparaging sense, but you know when you can sometimes feel like the kind of co-stars and things like that, that being friendly because they have to be. Do you know what I mean? Like there's sort of there's a tonality they have to bring to these conversations. You watch the Daredevil cast and it's like a high school reunion when they're chatting with each other, and it's so fun to see that. And like you look at, I don't know, Deborah Ann Wool on John Bernthal's podcast is one of the most like heartwarming things you'll ever watch in your entire life. Just two people who like clearly respect and care about each other, being interested in each other. And at one point, Deborah Ann Wool, it's a clip somewhere on YouTube, but you should watch the full interview. At one point, Deborah Ann Wool, John Bernthal can't understand what D&D is. She's trying to explain why D&D is such an important part of her life. And she's like, let's do a quick bit of D&D. And she runs him through a scenario. And it's so funny watching John Bernthal, like, you know, it's John Bernthal. Like, he's the Punisher. He's a wall of muscle. He's like the icon of masculinity, right? It's so amazing watching him become really vulnerable and take this moment really seriously and meet Deborah Ann energy and try and participate and like, he doesn't think it's like a silly thing. He takes it really seriously, and they're having fun, but like, you can tell he's engaged in that moment. I feel like the part of what makes Daredevil special, and I think you only get this from the freedom and the flexibility they had in those early days of Netflix, and as you say, Pat, the kind of sandbox, as it were, is you get people who are serious about making a particular piece of art, doing it together, and that is a very different cultural exchange, energy exchange than you've been paid X number of millions of dollars to be in this film next to this other person, right? Those are very, very different things. And yeah, they overlap for sure, right? Those things they're not necessarily mutually exclusive. But I think it's compelling, again, to see people that like doing this thing back together doing this thing after there was this moment where it felt like maybe that wasn't happening, where they brought in a whole bunch of new people and it was like, we're not doing that anymore. And then they went, no, like, hang on, let's slow down, take a minute. What made this thing work? And it's these characters and it's this world, and let's develop those relationships. So I'm excited, but I'm also like, it's a tempered excitement. I don't know. What about Joel? What's your final thoughts here?
Let me get one aside out, because I saw this and I meant to message you. Have you seen the clip of the Punisher dude, John, when he got cast, and he didn't really know anything about the character, so he went to a comic book store to buy some comics and stuff. And so he walks up to the counter with this load of stuff, and it had been announced, so the cashier knew who he was and knew he was going to play Punisher, and said, you don't want this, you don't want this, you want this, read these. And so, like, and that's what John was saying, like, in the interview, was like, this character is because this one comic guy gave him the right material, or gave him that type of material to look at. So what we got as Punisher could have been way different if he had just been handed to, like, the Marvel Zombies issue of, whatever, if he had been given something different. And that's just so interesting to think about, that as cool as that character is, it was, just kind of random happenstance that that influence got to him.
I mean, after a certain fashion, everything becomes entropy, right? Like, if you examine something long enough, it's like, yeah, that was just kind of pure luck and coincidence that it came together that way. But that's awesome. And also, like,
yeah, that is a cool story.
Yeah, good on John. Man, he just seems like the most humble, thoughtful guy. You know what I mean? Like, it's really incredible. And I think we need more men that are typically masculine in that way, who are famous, that are also comfortable performing that kind of level of vulnerability, and engaging with the world in a trying to better themselves, not just through acts of domination, but through acts of vulnerability and care and things like that, and respect. And I think if you want a role model for the type of person to be, not just if you identify as particularly masculine, but just in general, it feels like John Bernthal is a very aspirational figure, I think, in general, the type of person he is and the way he conducts himself. And I will stop.
Him and Dave Bautista.
Yeah, Dave. Yeah, dude. That guy seems like
he's a good role model.
Yeah, he's in touch with the universe in a way that I think we should all aspire to, man. Yeah, for sure. I love a tough man that feels things. It's great.
Hell yeah. My final thoughts on it are optimistic, because, as you said, David, I think they've put up a lot of consideration into this show, as in comparison to like other shows. That has the symptom of that is production issues, rewrites, stuff like that, stuff that necessarily isn't a great sign of a potential show's health. But on the other hand, I think it's just goes to illustrate like how much everyone on this project cares about it. So I'm pretty optimistic, and I'm pretty keen to watch this show. What can I say? I'm excited.
That's it. That's the vibe. Darth, what about you? Closing thoughts here.
Well, as a Star Wars fan, the quality of the shows is something that I have grown to accept. I might be disappointed by, and I've learned to be okay with that. So I'm not worried about it being bad because I will still enjoy it, whether it's good or bad. So I'm excited as well. Hopefully it'll be better than Acolyte and the past several shows I've watched.
we quite liked Acolyte in the end. I know that you haven't watched that full edit, but like by the end of that conversation, I think we were all like, maybe it was okay, which is damning as praise. You're like, well, it wasn't terrible.
I mean, if you just re-edit the whole
season
thing.
2's on the horizon.
Andor season 2's coming up, baby. I'm not sure if I'm emotionally ready for that though. You know?
I think you need to rewatch the first season for the 6th time.
Yeah, this is what always happens when we do a Star Wars conversation for Darth's channel. Is we talk about a Star Wars thing, and then I invariably rewatch Andor. Is the problem? So like I don't know
an
what
equation for every Star Wars show. Add an Andor.
Yeah, exactly. If David's on a train traveling 40 miles east, watching Andor, at what speed will he finish before the next Star Wars conversation? Yes. Cool. Okay, I think we're all, excited, but like, we're gonna wait and see. I tell you what though, Vinny D, looking fit, looking good, man.
Yeah, he's looking thinner. Yeah.
Yeah, he sort of has a regal quality to him now.
He's always been putting on weight for the role though, hasn't he? So, yeah, I think it's a good thing that he's not putting himself at risk again for a role.
Yeah, who was it that was talking about that? I think it was Rahul Kohli when he was on Midnight Mass. He was talking about how difficult it is to put weight on for like films, because you sort of have to eat a lot of food or and like to get like larger, right? Not necessarily bulking, but like actually putting on fat. It's just like incredibly uncomfortable and difficult to do. And yeah, you kind of, I guess I'm happy for Vinny D that he, however they've ended up in this place, it seems like, yeah, maybe he's a bit thinner and maybe it's a bit less of an uncomfortable scenario for him to be in, which is what we want to see,
I'm over here just laughing. I'm like, y'all need to come to America because putting on weight is easy.
Yeah, the portions are double the size of Australia.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And everything is like calorically dense but has no nutrition. Yeah. Well, I think let's leave it there. We've gone on for a minute here, which is I think what we always do. Only us could take 30 seconds of a trailer and make it into an hour. Darth, pluggables, where can people find you? What do you got going on? What's coming up? This will go out relatively quickly, so if you got anything on the horizon. I know I badgered you the other night into an essay, but you don't have to necessarily announce that.
Well, I mean, ironically, like I'm still working on my Acolyte coverage because like the review that we did in the podcast was kind of like totally tangential to what I actually want to talk about, which is much more I really like talking about like the psychology of our reaction to the content. So there's pages of stuff I've got written. So that's still the next project. And then I still have our Sherlock one to edit eventually at some point. It's on the list.
What, like 40 hours of that or whatever when it ended up being?
Yep.
Where can people find you, Darth?
I'm recording YouTube, Darth, DARTH''. And actually I'm recording with Sam tomorrow night. What is it, Gaming Professor? I watched one of his videos, and it was I was like, I gotta interview you about like filming techniques and stuff. I was like, that was a great production. But yeah, we're gonna talk about the Hermit Jedi and the how so many of them are going under that paradigm, but why is that acceptable? And why did everyone hate that for Luke, but it was fine for Yoda and Obi-Wan? Anyway,
it's true.
It'll be a fun talk.
It's true. Why'd that little green frog get a pass? Something to think about. Something to think about. Makes you think. Patrick, where can people find A Method to the Madness should they desire to hear more of you talking about film, and of course me talking about film now that I'm a regular? Where can they find it?
You can find A Method to the Madness on Spotify, YouTube, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts. Search up A Method to the Madness podcast. Will probably pop up. If you like Breaking Bad stuff, we do a lot of that, so you should give it a listen.
Give it a listen. You can find the links to all of that in the show notes down below. If you made it this far, you guys know what Zero Indent is. I don't have to plug it for you. ZeroIndent.com, patreon.com/ZeroIndent to support us. We've got a lot of really exciting things coming up in 2025. I finally have a bit of a roadmap for what the Zero Indent review will become after Daredevil and the details. It's going to be really exciting. I think you guys are going to love it. Give us a follow on Patreon. Give us a like, a comment, wherever you consume this, whether you consume it on your podcast catcher of choice or on YouTube. We appreciate that, not everyone is in a financial position to help out. If you are, that's great. If not, the best way to help us out is to tell one person in your life you think would enjoy the show, hey, go check it out. I think you'll be interested in this. Word of mouth means a lot more than any advertising we could ever do. We appreciate you guys for watching or listening. We will catch you next time for, because of how time works, I don't know what's going to come out after this. I think an episode of the normal show, but that'll do it for this Break Glass in Case of Emergency bonus episode. Catch you guys next time. If you like these handcrafted studies of genre fiction, please head over to ZeroIndent.com or patreon.com/ZeroIndent if you'd like to consider supporting us. Even if you just give us a follow on Patreon, that helps us out. Leave a comment, a like, and if you're in a financial position to do so, you can support us and get access to early content, additional videos, director's commentaries, audio diaries, and all kinds of different things we have coming up. It really makes a difference helping keep independent media crit alive. Once again, that is ZeroIndent.com or patreon.com/ZeroIndent if you'd like to support us.